Okay, so if you Okay, so welcome to the 5D podcast. We've got a bit of a special episode this week because we're linking up with the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival. We're going to be looking at a journey through Australian genre cinema. It's not my area of expertise. It's kind of like a school visit for me. I'm going to be schooled by a couple of guys that I've been in contact with over the last few weeks. Simon Foster, Festival Director of Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival, and Travis Johnson, steering committee member of Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival. I'm going to let you guys talk and introduce yourself because I hate doing all that stuff, and I hate doing it. This is so and this is so. We also will say as well we have got shall I keep it quiet yet, Simon, about who we might have coming in later on? Shall we keep that as a wee bit surprise?
Let's sell the sizzle and not the steak at this stage. Let's just keep it there. Let them know that there's fingers crossed, there's a big name of Australian genre cinema coming up later, but not right
now. Big name. And then if it doesn't appear, if there's something goes wrong, we can just edit this wee bit out.
Yeah, we can just cut this right out. Little podcast magic.
Yeah, I know, right? I know the magic of editing. All right, guys, come on, introduce yourself. Tell us about yourselves and tell us why we're doing this and why it's important that we're doing this. You tell me.
Well, we're doing this because of you, Stuart. You reached out and wanted to make a connection, and I was so thrilled to do it. So thank you very much. We started this sort of, I guess it's a bit of a breakaway film festival down here in Sydney. There's another one that I was part of for a while. But we wanted to do something bigger, something better, and we launched the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival last year, November 20. We were one of the first festivals to, I guess, one of the first social gatherings really to sort of congregate at the back end of COVID, and found that there was even with all the sort of negativity in the air and all the do we come out? Do we wear masks? Do we have to wash our hands every 5 minutes? That sort of thing. We still had great crowds at our first event last November, and so there's certainly an audience for science fiction down here in Sydney that was untapped, and with Travis on board and a great committee that sort of helped along the way, we made a bit of a success of it, didn't we, Trav? I think it went all right.
Yeah, we did. It was really successful. We had a lot of fun. We spread a wide net, a lot of international films, both shorts and features, a lot of Australian content, really successful with the crowds. We did some cool panels, and we're looking forward to doing it all again this year.
Yeah, we sure are.
Did it take you by surprise how successful it was? Did you know there was going to be like a kind of audience out there, or was it something that you felt you just didn't know how it was going to go?
We didn't know how it was going to go. And credit to the venue, the Actors Centre Australia. They, cut us a deal because they didn't know how it was going to go either. So we got good venue rates. We were certainly well looked after by a lot of the sales agents around the world. We went to them and said, we're a startup, not-for-profit festival. We're planning on being really big, but we're not there yet. And they all cut us some slack on some of the bigger films we were able to acquire. So the mood was one of sort of community and helping each other out in the science fiction sector and the science fiction world. So that definitely helped moving forward. And in the end, we scored a couple of big Australian premieres, or one big Australian film, Monsters of Man, which I think is just rolling out around the world. We were able to get that for our opening night film. And that was a quote unquote sold out session because even if it was only like 40% full, it was still considered, it's a COVID sellout, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
And we had a great turnout from the Australian short film community. So we were very surprised at how, we were able to make it happen. So,
it's when I was growing up, I mean, I'm a kind of kid of the 70s and 80s, as it were. And, back then, being a sci-fi fan, even going, from a country that, in the UK with a huge history of sci-fi and pop culture and all this stuff, it wasn't cool. But I mean, now it is new cool, isn't it, these days? Now the whole sort of being a geek or a nerd or into pop culture or sci-fi, it's almost a badge of honor these days, rather than something you had to kind of like, what do you, I like Star Trek, and you kind of keep it under your thing. And when I was a kid, and when somebody found out, which maybe quite rightly, because I was a bit of a nerd, but when somebody found out when I was about 15, I was a member of this Star Trek fan club called, what's it called? Enterprise, and I got so much ribbon, so probably quite rightly as well, but I got so much ribbon. But these days it's there, isn't it? It's just, it feels like it's just a huge reservoir of geekiness and nerdness out there that we're all kind of just like tapping into now. It's really weird.
Absolutely. I think back in the day in our formative years, because we're all of a roughly similar vintage, I think we're all within a decade or so of each other. It's like sci-fi and genre, like screen stuff, movies and television, was kind of thin on the ground. So you would watch whatever came along, like, oh, Space Rangers, let's give that a shot. And even if it was dreadful, you'd like stay up late at night and watch it. And now genre film has reached such a point of prominence that you're kind of spoilt for choice. You've got your massive Marvel films, but you've also got international cinema. You've got smaller indie stuff. Got a great short film community out there making really interesting films. So I think, and I don't want to speak to Simon here, but I will. Part of our aim is to expose an Australian audience in particular to the more obscure, the more niche, the more indie, the more outre, the more kind of boundary pushing sci-fi, which is currently doing the rounds. And I think, if I do say so myself, we've been pretty successful, man. We're doing okay. We're kicking some goals.
Yeah. What about the future then? Where do you see it going? Because I mean, the result. Obviously we've had the whole COVID, the worldwide pandemic, which doesn't. It is, maybe there's a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, but we had the announcement yesterday that the restrictions are still going to be continuing for a while over here, and so we've got all this, and I know it's hammered, obviously, indie filmmaking. What do you think about the future? Do you think we're going to see a glut of pandemic films, and we're going to see, in terms of production, how do you think it's going to affect people? Because people just can't get films made, can they, at the moment?
I'm working through the submissions for this year's festival now. We've just clocked over 100 films on the Film Freeway site, and I am noticing. In fact, I can announce it here. I'm dedicating a specific session of the festival to films made and inspired from sort of the COVID conditions. We've already announced a film called No Tomorrow, which a young American filmmaker made just on his iPhone and on his MacBook, and it's a very clever sort of time loop story. We've got a couple of shorts that that look like the way we look now, just squares on a screen, and somehow they form a really interesting narrative out of that. So there's that technical side of filmmaking that is reflecting how the only way you can make movies in a pandemic lockdown, and then there's sort of the other films which are exploring a world where we're all disconnected as human beings. The dystopian film has been fairly standard of the science fiction genre for many years. And I'm seeing those sort of films and those sort of narratives being played with in the stuff that's being submitted this year. So science fiction, I mean, it's adapted to reflect whatever current society is going to, like a lot of great genre films, like the horror films and those sort of movies are. They reflect common social ills and concerns, but they also reinterpret them in a way that I just find fascinating, which is probably why, as an old man as I am, I'm still doing a science fiction film festival, because in a world where I sounded like the trailer guy then, didn't I? In a world.
In a world.
No, but in a world where we're looking for better options and more interesting things going on, especially over the last 4 years of the political turmoil we've had, it's science fiction has stepped up and filled a big void.
Let's talk about some of these this list of films, because you basically said, you want to talk about a little bit about Australia's science fiction genre, particularly film and TV, which is the whole point of this. And then you sent me a list of films on the sheet, and I'm looking through them and going, no, I haven't heard of that. No, seriously, let me. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend, because there is a caveat to this. And I'm looking at them, no, I haven't heard that. And then I would do a bit of research on some of them, and I go, oh, wait a minute, no, I have seen this, and I
Ah,
have, and I don't know whether it was the titles of them. I mean, there was one I had to laugh. Which one was it now? Oh yeah, Iron Sky. And you sent me Iron Sky was included in your list.
yep.
I'm going Iron Sky, Iron Sky. I'm sure I've seen that. I'm sure. And then I look, yep, Nazis on the moon. Of course, the Fourth Reich and all this
Yeah.
stuff. You got this stuff that, this list of films, and I'm looking at them, and I don't know whether or not you feel as if, in terms of Australia's history of films, do you feel it's a strong history, or do you feel it's kind of gone like under the radar, like it did with me in a way? Because there are so many of these films which I do know, but they haven't, for some reason, they haven't stuck. But when I've watched them, I've enjoyed. There's a whole list of them that I've loved, and there's a couple here which you've identified, which I really do want to watch. Particularly the Time Guardian.
No, you don't want to watch
How
that
I've never seen the Time Guardian.
That may be
Is
historically important, but it's not necessarily a good film. So that's
I
the
want to see it because it looks probably. I mean, the quote I've got for the Time Guardian: "If this film didn't end Dean Stockwell's and Carrie Fisher's careers, nothing will." If there's a tag like, if that's a tag that sells me, I'm sorry, but I think that just completely sold me to watch this film. Tell me about some of these films on the list that you sent me and what
well,
they mean to you guys.
let me give you a bit of context first. Back in the day in the 70s and 80s, we used to have here in Australia a tax incentive called 10BA, which was a real sweetheart deal for producers. And it basically meant for every $1 you threw in a film production, you'd get like a $2 tax break. Is
Right.
that right, Simon? Is that
Give or take, something like that. Yeah, yeah.
something like that? But what that meant is that we had this flood of film production in Australia, and it was like sort of the new Australian cinema. You Peter Weirs and Bruce Beresfords and all that doing kind of more arty stuff. But you also had the Ozploitation explosion, which meant that we got a lot of cowboys making a lot of dreadful films. But if you sow a wide enough field, you're going to grow some strange fruit. So in amongst a lot of stuff, which is honestly not worth tracking down unless you are really committed to checking out the history of Australian cinema, you would get the occasional Mad Max, you would get the occasional Time Guardian, but that's probably not a good example. But you get a Razorback or something like that, which would kind of stand the test of time. So that's why we do have a rich history of genre film in Australia. But it's also one that you have to navigate very carefully, because if you see like 2 or 3 bad ones in a row, you're probably going to give up. And there are a lot of bad ones out there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess rather in any sort of any area, for every Star Wars or whatever, I mean, one of my favorite films back in the day, sci-fi films, is a film called Dark Star, which
Oh yeah, John Carpenter.
John Carpenter, yeah, which is, for me, when I watched little bits and pieces of the Time Guardian, it reminded me so much of Dark Star in terms of and Dark Star is regarded as a classic, and yet it's a really, I mean, it was made on a tiny budget. I think it was Carpenter's first film. I think it was
It was
first
his
film.
student project, which he then expanded into a feature, and it got a theatrical release.
Yeah, but yes, it's got this great sort of reputation, and yet when you watch it, I remember watching it for the first time many years ago, thinking, man, this is really kind of cheap and sort of like, but it's a really sort of great creative piece of work. Does it annoy you a wee bit, and when people talk about Australian genre cinema, particularly sci-fi, that they'll go straight to the likes of Mad Max as the first thing? Is that a kind of, do you find that annoying?
I don't think so. Certainly that first Mad Max, which I guess in many ways was like George Miller's Dark Star, he shot that for next to nothing. It was all based on his sort of just an idea he was having as a young sort of medical student at the time. So, and the fact that in hindsight, Mad Max has obviously gone on to spawn 3 other films and become this giant international franchise phenomenon is, we're quietly proud of Mad Max. I would also hazard that I don't know if that many young filmmakers nowadays or film watchers may have watched the first Mad Max. It is a very sort of bare bones film, and one that was clearly shot in the back roads of Melbourne and some country roads without police involvement and doing stuff on the sly, which is great to watch nowadays. But just to go back briefly to what Travis was saying about the Ozploitation era, there was a documentary a few years back called Not Quite Hollywood, in which a filmmaker called Mark Hartley put these Ozploitation films in a different light. Like sort of grouped them under this sub-genre and gave real definition to what Ozploitation was. And these films, that when they were released in Australia, they only had to get a certain number of screens to earn the tax break, and they a lot of them just went straight and sort of rode the back of the VHS boom in the early 80s and mid 80s to some success overseas. But no one really talks about Steve Bisley in Chain Reaction anymore, or no one really talks about the Brian Trenchard Smith film Dead End Drive-In. But they've films like that, which were just completely sort of fly-by-night efforts of the day, have taken on a real resonance and really stand for a really creative period in Australian filmmaking history.
It's funny you just mentioned Steve Bisley there for a moment, because I went to see, I shouldn't have gone, because I think I was underage. In fact, I'm sure I was when I first went to see Mad Max. So that would have been about, what, 79?
79 here in Australia.
Yeah.
Well, next couple
So I would have been what, definitely underage, but certainly underage. And I went to see, and then I didn't see it for quite a lot of years. Like you say, it was one of those films that at the time, certainly over here, I don't know about you guys, but certainly over here, it had this kind of cult following, but that was it. It didn't really sort of garner much until a couple of years later when obviously the second one came out, and then the whole thing exploded. But I hadn't seen the original Mad Max for about 10, 15 years, and I was convinced in my own mind that Steve Bisley's character was Brian Brown playing him for years. And I would argue with people. No, Brian Brown was in. I think you're fine. Brian Brown was in, and just completely missed up. And so sorry, Steve, if you ever watch or listen to this, but I kind of etched you out of my whole consciousness of Mad Max for many years.
It's actually kind of amazing that Brian Brown hasn't been in a Mad Max film, because he's in every other Australian film. It's just kind of odd that they haven't just chucked him in. It's some kind of marauder or wasteland scavenger.
And he's sort of that classically ochre, Australian type, but he sided with the Peter Weirs and the Bruce Beresford of the day. He was making Breaker Morant when George Miller was making Mad Max. So he fell in with the uppity sort of university crowd who were making important European type films while the Ozploitation.
There's a couple of genre efforts he's turned up in. The two which come to mind is the TV movie On the Beach in the 90s, based on the Neville Shute novel. So he's in that. Yeah. And he has a brief but hilariously memorable role in Gods of Egypt. Where he plays the king of the gods, looking at his kingdom like he's someone who's just done home renos and is really, really happy about how the kitchen's turned out. He's like, yeah, I've done all right there. That's not a bad bit of creation. I quite like what I've done.
That's it. That's a really interesting point because Gods of Egypt raises the career and the output of Alex Proyas, and we'll point out straight away that Mr. Proyas is the patron of our festival, so we all adore him. I even have fond feelings for Gods of Egypt. I think I'm one of like 3 or 4 people.
So do I. I have a good time with that film.
Yeah.
If you can't enjoy Jerry Butler flying in on a chariot, like pulled by scarabs, and not even bothering to disguise his Scottish accent, and he's playing Set? Is it Set? Yeah.
Like that.
Man, give it up. You're taking cinema too seriously. Like, that film's a blast.
It's great. Gods of Egypt. I loved it. I watched it with my wife only probably, I don't know, a couple of months ago, pretty recently, because I think it was one of the streaming channels, Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
We just sat down and watched it, and I went, "This is ridiculous." But it's one of those ridiculous that you just love in kind of every minute of it.
Exactly, and he's always had a very distinctive look and feel to his films. He came out of film school with a movie called Spirits of the Air, Gremlins of the Cloud, which is this very sort of MTV influence, kind of just. You tell he was a filmmaker who was adored by his lecturers and adored by all the other students, and for his first film he was going to make whatever he wanted to make, and Spirits of the Air, Gremlins of the Cloud looks exactly like that. It's a very strange film.
I saw that years ago. I saw that maybe a couple of years ago. I didn't know. I think I loved it, but I wasn't sure if I loved it, because it's visually, remember the music as well. The music was stunning.
Yeah.
But visually, it was like some sort of, I don't know. It kind of, it's a kind of dreamlike sort of experience. Yeah, and it's one of those films where I remember watching it thinking, I really think I love that, but I'm still not sure. But I think I did. No,
Yeah. And of course, Price went on to do Dark City, and Dark City is a Sydney shot film, although it's an international production. And he's a director who, even if he stumbles a bit or aims a bit too high with some of his storytelling, his visuals, which is such a huge part of science fiction cinema anywhere in the world, are just great to watch.
With you sending the list of stuff through, I was looking through, obviously trying to do a little bit of research, and then obviously I gravitated to, the George Miller stuff, and I was looking through, obviously the Mad Max stuff, but I was surprised, and I don't know why, because it just probably shows a lack of research that I do on these. I forgot that George Miller did one of the segments of the Twilight Zone movie.
He did.
What was that, 82?
Yeah, he did Nightmare at 30,000 Feet.
Yeah,
with John Lithgow.
Yeah, which for me, that's always, like many people, I guess. It's always my favorite Twilight Zone episode with Shatner that did it, wasn't it? William Shatner that did, I think, the original one. I can remember when I went to the cinema to watch, and I loved it. I know it got a little bit of a paste in, I think, the film at the time for a couple of the segments, and obviously you had the whole situation with who was the actor that was killed in it.
Vic Morrow. Vic Morrow died.
Yeah.
John Landis.
I've just a little birdie just gave me a little bit of an inkling that we do have a special guest waiting to come on board. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we let's see, we're just sort of pressing all the right buttons that we need to press. We shouldn't talk about Australian genre cinema and the pop culture influence it's had without talking to a gentleman who's been front and center of that since he first stepped before a camera almost. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Vernon Wells.
Hi, Vernon, mate. How you doing?
Good, mate. How are you?
Well, we're really happy and so pleased that you've made it. Considering the time, what time is it where you are there?
4:30 in the morning.
Oh, you trooper, man.
You're a gentleman. You're an absolute gentleman. Mate, first of all, I want to say congratulations. Now, I don't know if you know, I'm the festival director of the Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival, and you won our best lead actor in a short film last year for Starspawn. And we were never able to sort of fully offer you our congratulations, although it got a huge response on the night. But congratulations, mate, and thank you for contributing to the genre the way you have all these years.
It's my pleasure. I was actually quite excited to win that award. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. And Travis, of course, was totally out of his socks over it. And I'd like to thank you guys for giving it to me. I mean, I love doing that particular short with Travis, whom I adore anyway. But it was so much fun doing it, and then to be rewarded for the effort we all put into it was just out of control. I loved it. I thought it was just wonderful.
It was, and it got a huge response from the audience. Sorry, Travis.
Different Travis, we should point out. We're not that nepotistic. It was not me. It was a different Travis.
Yes, it was the one up in Queensland.
Travis Baden, who I know will be thrilled to get a mention on the podcast and from you, mate. So congratulations. Listen, we were just about to talk Mad Max and Road Warrior and Mad Max 2. Can you give us some sort of insight into your memories of that period? And I guess we'll also move to how you feel about it, how its pop culture influence over the years.
Road Warrior was, that was the first film I ever made. So it's very vivid in my memory. The most vivid thing, of course, is having a cold ass for about 5 weeks. It was rather chilly, and they actually had this thing going that they called me barometer bum. Every time the cheeks of my butt went purple, they got us somewhere where it was warm. It was, but my memories of that film were that Mel was just amazing to work with. He was so genuinely kind to me, it being my first production that I'd ever done.
Yeah.
And the working with George Miller was just an amazing an amazing thing anyway. I mean, George is just one of those incredible human beings who, once you work with him, you realize how little you actually know of what you think you know. And I just had so much fun doing that film and never expected it. I don't think anybody really expected it to go where it went. George may have. As an actor, I thought it would be my 15 minutes of fame. You know, it would come out in Australia, maybe Japan. And that was basically it. You know, it wouldn't go anywhere. It would be just this really fun little film that we'd made. And to be involved in something that became such a phenom throughout the world. I mean, my God, it still, even today, people come up and talk to me about it. I thought it was just amazing. And, you know, I thank George for my career, because if I'd never done it, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys. However, I probably wouldn't have so many broken bones in my body, but I was, you know, it was just, to me, it was something that was amazing to be involved in, and put me somewhere I never, ever in my wildest dreams expected to be. You know, being a little boy from the country, it was just, you know, out of control.
You must have put a lot of faith in George, because, you know, it was a genre that, apart from the first Mad Max film, there weren't bare ass-cheeked road warriors running around in the history of cinema. This was something that he was bringing as almost a complete vision to you. So that's sort of, that exhibits a great deal of faith in a director.
I think a lot of it was that really I didn't know any better. So I was more than happy to allow George to tell me what to do. But George in himself is just an amazing director. He instills confidence in you as an actor that you know more than you really know. And he refuses to allow you to think that he is making the decisions. He wants you to understand that they're being made by you, so that you control the character, which I found to be enlightening. In retrospect, it was amazing, because it taught me so many valuable lessons about what I had to do and how to do it from there on in. And I don't think that if I had done that, I ever would have had that same way of deconstructing and then reconstructing a character and the actual film itself before I did it. So I have nothing but you know, great joy and feeling for all of them. I mean, the cast was amazing for a start. I was the newbie on the block. I mean, seriously, the total dumbass, and everybody treated me so well. I mean, Mel was wonderful. The rest of the cast were just amazing. I mean, we had some wonderful old timers in that, and some people that have been around the block forever. And so I just learnt from those who had gone before me, and it made the path so much easier for me to follow. And, you know, there by the grace of God go I, sort of thing. So I was more than happy at the end. And as I said, to me, when I finished that film, that was it. I never expected it to go any further. I thought that was my big moment, my 15 minutes of fame. I would then walk off into the sunset and go back to directing commercials, which would be, you know, cool by me. I'd be happy. But just by fate alone, I could never actually leave where I was. You know, the next thing that happened was I got asked to come to the States and do a film over here. So
you go from Mad Max 2, then you went to Commando. Was that you sort of were?
No, I did Weird Science first.
Weird Science, of course, yes.
Same haircut.
Yes, it was exactly the same character, except, you know, he was a little older and had a little more brain. But yeah, I went into that, and then after that I did Commando, because Joel Silver was the same producer, and he decided when I was over doing that he had this film coming up with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that I would be perfect for it. Unfortunately, that wasn't the view of other people involved in the film. And I was actually cast in it after the film had started started filming, because the gentleman that was playing the character I played didn't continue in the role. And so they got me to come over from Australia and take over and do it. So that was all in itself, very, very lucky to be able to do that. And it just went on from there. I kept wanting to go home, and they kept hiring me to do things. And so, 40 years later, I'm still stuck here. I haven't been able to get home since.
Vernon, tell us the stories about Arnold Schwarzenegger in how you kind of persuaded him that you were the right man for the part. 'Cause he didn't think you were going to be hard enough. He thought you were a wee bit of a, I don't know. Tell how you...
A bit of a puss.
A bit of a puss.
Yeah. It was actually quite funny, because when I came over, I flew across to Los Angeles, and I virtually started filming the next morning. And I was very tired, not quite together, but having done all these things with George, I had a pretty fixed idea of how I wanted to do the character and how I saw things going. And so on the set, when I first went on the set, I was very quiet. I was just watching everything, because the difference between an Australian production back then and an American production was about $20 million. So, you walked into the set, and it was just totally, like, what the, yeah. So it was so different, and getting used to it was just a little bit of a mind twist. And so I was really looking at what was going on, and when we were rehearsing, I was just sort of mumbling the words. I was trying to figure out where the hell the lights were and the camera and the actors. And Arnold apparently called Joel over and said, a little too loud, because I heard it. I said to Joel, I don't think this is going, I don't think this is going to work. He's a pussy. And I went, excuse me? You put that on an Australian, you're kind of looking to get a kick in the ass. So, of course, when we actually did the take, everybody's seen the film, so that scene, it was him on the tied to the table. I just leapt on him virtually with this knife that wasn't real, luckily for him, and sort of did the whole scene. And when the scene was over, Joel walked over to Arnold and he said, if you're not happy and it didn't work, then we'll shut down production and recast it. And Arnold just looked at Joel from the table and went, never give him a real knife. And that was the end of it. We became very close friends, just he sort of accepted me for who I was. But I had that thing. I don't work like Americans. I tend to get more very Australian, very European. I'm very quiet. I just sort of move into the character, and I don't go around talking and yelling and being an asshole. So I think that kind of confused him, that I was just going to be this quiet pushover.
Mate, I want to ask, the other part of this podcast is I guess, pop culture and pop culture influence. How do you reconcile the career you've had and your place in pop culture history, Wes and the Mohawk, and it became so synonymous with that genre of film? All the Italian rip-offs had someone like Wes in it. All the VHS films that came out through that era, they were all taking on your look, and you did it first. How do you look back on the role that you played in that?
I look back at it with the fact that we were so very lucky to be the first. It was, and being the first, it's a little bit like making Gone with the Wind. You make this film that turns out 100 times better than anybody thought it would turn out, but suddenly, because it's so successful, everybody wants to make it. So suddenly you've got 100 copies of it. And I think more than anything, the reason that Road Warrior was so successful was that George is a brilliant editor, I mean, he made that film work simply from the perspective of editing. You know, he edited some scenes frame by frame to get exactly what he wanted. And that was what, if you look at films that are in that same genre, they lacked that. They didn't have that degree of love or whatever you want to say in them. They were just put together like a film. George didn't put it together like a film. He put it together like an epic. And I think that was where we created a genre and we made the whole thing our own. And then people had to follow us. We didn't follow anybody. We actually started the whole thing, and people followed what we had done and tried to actually catch up or do better, which I don't think anybody ever has done a film that's, I mean, the only film that was close to it was George's last one. And it's very much the same thing, you know, that wonderful editing, the way it was all put together. So I think I never consider myself to be a pop icon anyway. I'm just, you know, I'm a working actor who's been incredibly lucky with my career.
Who just happens to be a pop culture icon.
Just happens to be a pop culture icon. Yeah, you know, it always embarrasses me, to be blunt. I get so, you know, people will come up and they'll say, "Oh my God, you know, you're a legend," and I'm like, you know, I'm still here. You know, tell me that when I'm gone. You know, it's like, and it was funny. I've got around 4 awards, the you know, career awards, and I kept thinking they give these to people when they've died. If somebody knows something I don't, I mean, it's like, what the hell?
Well, the thing is, when I spoke to Travis Bain a couple of years ago, and he said to me, he said, "Oh, making a film with Vernon Wells," and I went, "No, you're not." And he went, "No, I am. And I said, "Do you want to speak to him?" And I went, and this one we spoke on the phone when we on, for that first time. And he said, "Oh, half an hour. Vernon's just filming or something, and then we'll speak." And I went downstairs, and I'm walking around the room, and my wife says to me, "What's the problem?" I said, "I'm going to be speaking to Vernon Wells in a couple of months." She goes, "It's Donny. You know, it's just a man." "No, he's not. No." He's not. And I just geeked out. Luckily, I was a total professional when I spoke to you, obviously, you know, but it was genuinely exciting. So I'm sorry, mate, you are a pop culture icon, like it or not.
I always love the fact that people think that. It's just that I can't look at myself and think that.
When I was 10 years old, Commando was my favorite film of all time, to the point where my mother finally forbade me from getting it out from the video store because she'd seen it way too many times with me. Like, it was the bee's knees, the duck's nuts, the best thing I'd ever seen. So unfortunately, Vernon, you are a legend. You're just going to have to wear that, man.
Yeah, I know. But it's, you know what, it's I don't get me wrong. I'm incredibly humbled by the fact that people even think that, and of what I've achieved. I think that I was very fortunate in my own respect. I grew up with my grandfather and my mother, who was a single mum, and my mum was actually wrote songs. She wrote songs for Slim Dusty and other people way back in the old days. So that was where I always thought I'd be, was being a singer in a band, which I was in quite a few bands in Australia. That was my, as far as I thought, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Lots of sex, lots of drugs, and sing a song occasionally. I was happy to. That was kind of my life, that I thought. And by sheer accident, I was involved in an accident that nearly destroyed my career. I had my back fractured. I had to give up working with the band and go into something a little different. And our manager, Bobby, got so fed up with me being a pain in his ass that he went around to all the agencies to try and get rid of me. And someone was stupid enough to actually take me. And that's where it all started. So I never actually came into the business with any expectations of being somebody or doing something. I just thought it was a jolly old little thing. I was being paid to have a lot of fun. And that's how I always look. I still look at it like that. I'm having a great time and I'm being paid. And I think that's possibly why I'm still here. I've never taken it that seriously that I've become the asshole. More intent to be just Vernon Wells. We have this big thing. Everybody over here calls you sir. And I have a thing whenever I go on a set, anybody calls me sir, they have to put $5 in a tin. And I raise so much money for charity, it's unbelievable. Because people have this habit of going, sir, and I go, I'm sorry, what? Like, I don't deserve the title. I think you guys know, being Australians, you earn that title when people call you sir. It's not something that you just do. It's something you've earned. And I always feel I haven't earned it. You know, I'm still like a 20-year-old idiot. I run around like some kind of yo-ho having so much fun. And I just, and it's funny because now I do a lot more roles that are straight. You know, I do probably 60-40, 40% villain, 60% the good guy. And I have been doing I've got three coming up to the end of the year that I'm doing, and I'm doing Christmas stories and some things that you would never think could have ever happened to me. I'm doing Christmas films and kids films. It's like,
I was looking at your
have fallen, we've come down from that high tree. Now we're doing these movies. But
I was last night, Ben, and we were talking to you again. I was looking at your IMDb list, and it's the amount of work that you've done in the last. It seems to be increasing more and more as the years go on. You just don't seem to be stopping.
Yeah.
What keeps you going? Is it just enjoyment? Is it is it kind of like the travel? What is it? Why do you keep?
What's funny about it is that there was a time back when no one would hire me. I did what most people do when they get everything given to them and they have no clue how to control it or themselves. I went the route of being an alcoholic and druggy type thing. And my manager, the thing that stopped me is I was in my manager's office one day and they had a board on the wall which had pins in it, my name on it, and all these dates. And I thought maybe it was a film I was doing. So I said to Christina, I said, hey, Chris, is that a film I don't know about? And she said, no, actually, it's kind of like a betting ring. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, we're all betting on how long you'll live. And I went, what? And she went, you're on a one-way trip, kid. You are going to, and that just woke me up. I just went, what the hell? And I suddenly realized what I'd been doing to myself and to everybody around me. And it took about 2 years for me to get back into a position of doing what I wanted. And I had a whole different attitude when I came, when I started coming back. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who I tend to work with the same people a lot, like Travis, who Travis won't do anything unless my ass is somewhere near it. So, you tend to work around the same people. And I was talking to a good friend of mine over here, a director, and I said, so why do you keep hiring me, number one? And he said, you finally grew up, which was the whole thing that I suddenly kind of became who I was supposed to be. I learned that if you're a good actor, you don't act, number one, and that it's as they say, you are. And I've been able to attain that. A lot of it due to my wife. She's Japanese American, and Gracie kind of met me when I was at a very bad place in my life, and took me. She's Buddhist, so she sort of instilled in me a whole different sense of who I was, which started to make me understand what I was doing. And the characters I was playing got better because of it. I began to understand the humanity that I needed to put into the character. I think that's where it all began, and I've been exceptionally good at it. I'm one of the guys who sits down and looks at himself in the mirror and goes, what the fuck? How the hell did I get here? Because I don't see myself as how other people see themselves. We were talking about this the other day, and somebody said, for a villain, you were one of the best looking guys on film. And I'm like, what? That no, I consider myself number one to be ugly. I had never thought I was good looking in the least. And then all this work I get because of my voice, doing voiceovers. You know, everybody goes, you got the most amazing voice. I will seriously sit in a dark room and go, don't say a fucking word. It sounds horrible. And I have no faith in those things. It was other people that kept on pushing it at me, that it was what I had, this iconic, you know, being an icon and things like that. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's amazing people think like that, but I can't see myself as that. I see myself as a working actor, and I'm very proud of that, that I have actually maintained a career. And as you said, all the way through the pandemic and now, I haven't stopped work. And I'm still working every month for the next 5 months. I've got a film. You know, not a lot of actors can say that. And I think that I'm very blessed to be able to say that so many people want to work with me. Well, and it's always because somebody will contact me and say, oh, Travis Bain said we should talk to you about a film we're doing. It's that kind of thing that everybody says, you know, go talk to Vernon, he can do it. And I'm fortunate enough to get all of these recommendations. And of course I get and now I don't audition, which I think is funny. I always used to hate it. Believe me, the one thing that getting in front of a camera with nobody, I hated with such, detested it so bad. And then of course I got to a point of where I don't audition anymore. People just hire me, you know. It's like, you've done over 300 fucking films. What do we need to audition you for? You know, get your ass on the set. And I prefer that, to be blunt. You know, it's like, I don't want to audition. I hate auditions. And I really feel sorry for anyone that has to do one, because it's a very demeaning process. I mean, you really are not treated as who you are. You're kind of like cattle or something, you know, get in there and do it this way. And 90% of the time, it's not the way you as an actor would do it anyway. And you're kind of fighting this thing of, should I do it the way I see it, or should I do it the way I'm being told by somebody I don't know? And you know, you eventually realize you have to do it the way, because they have all the control, you don't. So it's a little bit of an annoyance. Now it's a whole different thing. You know, people ring up, or they contact my manager and say, we want him to do this. He negotiates a deal and I get a script and turn up on set. And I really like that. I prefer it. But, you know, I've been doing some really amazing shit. Excuse the French, but I have. There's been some stuff out there, man, that I am just stoked. There's a little thing I don't know. Didn't I tell you last time that we talked to have a look at Fear of the Woods?
Yeah.
You know, I won an award for that.
That was cool.
Yeah, so, and I mean, that was just a little film, but it turned out to be just brilliant. Not because of me, but because of everybody in it was just brilliant. And this is what I've been getting put into. You know, I get put into these amazing projects, and you know, even if I fell ass over head, I'd still get noticed because it's such a good project. It's like, who's the dipshit on the ground? Oh, that's Vernon Wells. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Just don't call him sir. Just don't call him sir.
Yeah, don't call him sir. He gets really pissed off if you do. But you know, I've got an amazing little show coming out called Jack Be Nimble, which I did with a young, which is not young, but with a Chinese actress, Bei Ling. And I did the whole thing in a wheelchair, which to me was a whole different, you know, you act and you're in a wheelchair. It's really difficult, but had a lot of fun doing it because it gave me another avenue to work through, that I had to be able to make it work. I always remember Steven Spielberg when I did Weird Science. I was talking to him, Inner Space. I was talking to him, and I said, so Stephen, why did you hire me? And he said, well, I love Road Warrior, because he lives very close to where I live, except he's up on the mountain, I'm down on the beach. And I was chatting to him about it, and he said, I love Road Warrior. It's one of my favorite films, and your character was one of the best characters that had been put on screen for a long time. And I said, oh, I said, you know, it fascinated me that you had me do a film where, number one, I say nothing, and number two, I wear sunglasses, and number three, I have a fake arm. And he said, yeah, I figured that if I took all the dialogue off you and took your eyes away and didn't let you have a hand, we'd see if you could really act.
Wow.
And that was his whole theory behind it, that he just wanted to see what I could do with none of the tools that an actor uses.
Yeah.
And I remember you got one of the biggest laughs in that film when you popped the kid's balloon. It was the perfect end. It was the perfect end to a wonderful sequence. It was you were fabulous.
It wasn't supposed to happen, and the director said to me, "We've got to finish this somehow. What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm an asshole. Maybe I should pop his balloon." And he went, "Oh, that is just so bad." We'll pop a little kid's balloon, and that's what we did, and it worked so well. I mean, it was just such a fun end to a great scene. But
you talk about before we unfortunately have to wrap this up in a short while. Can I just ask you about Starspawn Overture, because obviously that was a short 20 minutes, a kind of proof of concept, isn't it? Because I know Travis really wants to make it into a kind of full-blown Australian sci-fi production. What's the state of play with that? Is it looking as if it's going to happen, or are you still planning it? Or because obviously,
no, we're going to do it. It'll probably be done next year.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Travis definitely wants to do that. I love working with Travis because he's a lunatic. I mean, it was so funny that the first time I worked with him was when they did Landfall.
Yeah.
Another one I won an award for. And I was in Australia. I was actually touring Australia doing a travelogue all around Australia to all these places I loved and sort of doing my little thing. And a friend of mine, I was up in Cairns, and he said, do you ever look at your phone? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, there's a couple of emails on your phone you might want to look at. And I said, dude, I'm in the middle of friggin' Australia. We actually can't look at anything. He's at a blank screen. And he said, well, see if you can get, so I actually, in Cairns, I was able to get my phone working, and there was this cute little email sort of put up there. It wasn't to me, but it was just a general thing which said, you know, we've shot this film and we've got this piece in it that, you know, that we need to fulfill. And we wrote it actually with this iconic Australian actor in mind, but nobody knows how to get hold of him. And we couldn't afford to bring him to from America to Australia anyway. So if anybody knows anyone that's like Vernon Wells, could they let us know? And I read this and I thought, oh dear God. So I rang them, and of course they live in Cairns. So I rang them, I said, you know, what do you want? And, you know, just about scared them to death. And they said, you know, like this whole, and I said, you got 24 hours because that's all I've got is one day. So they flew me to Cairns, put me in a hotel. And this is so Australian. What I love about Australians is that they're nothing like Americans in what they do. They said, we're driving out to this wonderful place, amazing scenery, just up in the national park. And I said, oh, that sounds like real fun. So we drove out, and Travis said, you know, you wouldn't mind helping, would you, if you could just carry one of the boxes, because we've got to lump everything in. I said, no, of course not. Happy to help. So where we got to go? And he said, we just got to go over that hill. And I said, oh, piece of piss. 3 mountains later, I was about to kill somebody or something. And I was like, you've got to be kidding. They dragged my ass over 3 mountains to this amazing place. I got to admit, it was just the most amazing place. And of course, then the problem is that we had to take it all back out. Now, coming in wasn't so bad. Going out was hell on wheels. I mean, it was good God. And I did this little film with these guys. That was Throwback. It was the first thing I did with Travis, was this wonderful film about the Yeti, or the Australian Bigfoot. which I loved immensely. And then, of course, we did Landfall, which was just such an amazing film that he shot. And I love working with him, number one, because he's such a lunatic, and number two, because everything he writes and does, he ties up all the ends. You know, by the end of the film, you know everything that happened and why.
Yeah.
And I love that, you know, because you get to see the whole film. And then he always used to say to me, I've got this really cool idea for this big sci-fi movie, and I really, really want you to do it. And it's like, oh yeah. He said, it's called Starspawn. And I said, oh, what's it about? And he said, well, it's about the Min Min lights. And being an Australian, of course, I knew what that was. I said, they're not real, you dumb shit. You know, I mean, they're just reflections off the water or something. And he went, yeah, okay, but we're going to do this sci-fi film about it. And then lo and behold, he rang me and said, I need you to come over because we're going to do a proof of concept. And I said, oh, what, we're going to do part of the film? And he said, well, kinda. He said, it's just going to be you and your daughter. And I went, oh, okay. And he took me over there and we shot that amazing little proof of concept, which I just loved. I mean, I thought it was so beautifully done. And it got so much response, and now we're going to do the whole film next year.
I can't wait, because I think it was a great proof of concept. The little sort of creature that floats in front of the moon that goes above the treetops is a wonderful shot, and your performance, as the award sort of indicated, and your chemistry with a terrific young actress, I can't remember her name, but she was fantastic.
She was amazing.
Yeah, she was
really
terrific. You got a great response from the audience at our festival, mate, so thank you
Yeah.
very much.
She was just so easy to work with. She's very natural, which I loved. And she was so much, I mean, some of the scenes in it, especially when she's getting out of the car to chuck up and I'm firing the gun over her head, and her response to what I mean, she had me in fits because she was just so good to work with. I mean, she gave everything, you know, you didn't have to think, oh, this is going to be hard to do this. She just gave it to you. And I just loved it. I thought it was such a wonderful piece to do, and there was so many beautiful places that we shot.
Yeah, I can't wait for the feature. The feature's going to be fabulous. He's such a talented director.
He is. He's just a kid. You know, I mean, he just has so much fun. You see it in his eyes when he's working. He just. I may be doing another film with him towards the end of this year, which will be kind of fun too. That he's got written that he wants me to do. Which I love. That's what I mean. I get to work with very talented people, and I continue to work with them. It's just, you know, so much fun because you know who they are, how they work, and what they want you to do. So it makes everything so easy.
Mate, it's such an honor to talk to you, and thank you so much for.
Oh wait, I have a question.
Sure.
Yes.
Which may not get an answer, but maybe if we put it on the podcast or put it out in the universe, then maybe something will happen. George Miller is famous, not famous, but if you pay attention, you'll notice, for reusing actors in different roles in the Mad Max series. So Hugh Keith-Burn's done a couple, Bruce Spencer's played two different characters. One of the fellas who was strapped on the front of Humongous's War Machine was in the first Mad Max. So Vernon, if you get the call, are you still comfortable wearing arseless chaps on camera? Will you be up for Dave Furiosa?
If I got the call, I would crawl over broken glass. I mean, but the funny thing is, when they did the last one, I was in England doing a Comic-Con, and a guy walked up to me and he said, I have a message for you from George Miller. And I said, oh, sort of said, yeah, what's that? And he said, call off the dogs. You're not doing it. And I was like, what? And apparently there'd been this big surge on the internet for me to be in Fury Road. And I was talking to George at I was actually in Japan when they did the premiere of Fury Road. And I was talking to George, and I said, so when do I do the next one? Being facetious, but just kidding. And he said, you know what? You created a role that will never be duplicated, and therefore you fucked up your own career.
Oh, that's savage. That's absolutely savage.
And I went, hang on, you created it. I didn't. And he went, yeah, you just keep it. It's yours. It's like, and he was right. I knew all along. I mean, I was never upset because I figured it. And he said, no matter what we did with you, if anybody ever heard your voice, saw your eyes, or just your mannerisms, they would know it was Wes and we're not making another Road Warrior. But he also said to me, there is 2 more films to be made.
Mm.
So you don't know. There's Furiosa and Wasteland.
Mm.
So one has to kind of look at it logically.
May return one day. In some
I mean, I would love it. It was just that. To me, it would be the perfect circle for me to be able to have started my career there and end it there. I would be the happiest human being in the world. It's that simple. And as I said, I think apart from everything else in my life, I have just been exceptionally lucky and had this amazing career, which still continues, doing what I love more than anything on this planet, is working in front of the camera. Now, of course, I direct a lot and do stuff on the other side of it, which I find fascinating because I actually know what I'm doing now. But, I just find myself incredibly blessed, and I am, for all the people that watch my movies and go to the Comic Cons and things just to talk to me or see me, I'm just blown away. To me, it's just this amazing thing. And I'm just so proud of being one of the first Australians to ever come to America and be successful and lead the way for all the amazing talent we have. I mean, you have to be proud of that.
Yeah.
When I came to America, there was 3 Australians here, Mel Gibson being one of them. So, I have to be proud of the fact that we were able to open the doors for those people to be able to come through. And that's something you should be proud of. So from that perspective, I'm really proud of what I've done.
Mate, we're so blessed to have talked to you today. Thank you so much for phoning in and being part of our podcast. In hindsight, we couldn't have done a podcast about Australian genre cinema and Australian pop culture without you. So it's been a joy, mate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vernon. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm just more than happy to have done it. Of course, it's 5 o'clock in the effing morning. But apart from
is this you without coffee? This is you without coffee talking like that.
I know. No, actually, I'm going to wrap this up and then I'm going back to bed.
All right.
Get a couple more hours sleep before I have to get up and take the dogs for a walk. But no, thank you so much, guys. Seriously.
No, totally appreciate it, mate. Honestly, seriously, when you said you would do it at this time, we were so chuffed. So thank you. Thank you, guys.
No, my pleasure.
Right,
as always, love you all. Please be safe and God bless.
You too, man.
Thank you,
all
mate.
Right. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
What a champion.
What a treat. Stuart, thank you so much for organising that, mate. That was extraordinary.
Isn't he just the best? I mean, it's just, when he said he would get up at 4:30 in the morning just to talk to us, I was like, oh, it's just so cool. It's so cool.
I'm having the weirdest Mad Max 2 week. Because on Friday night, I was at the theatre because I review theatre for Time Out in Sydney. And I'm lining up and I see this older gentleman, tall, gangly dude. And I'm like, holy crap. I have to go and say hi. So I walk up to him and go, excuse me, sir. Are you Bruce Spence? And he's like, oh, yes. So I just want to say I'm a massive fan. Like, love your work ever since Mad Max 2. He shook my hand. He was really gracious. And then we went and watched the play. It was awesome. But so I've, the Gyro Captain and Wes in 1 week, completely independent of each other.
I would love to talk to Bruce Spence. I would love to talk, because I mean, I almost talked to him a couple of years ago, and we'd arranged it and everything, and then for some reason it didn't happen. I think he had some filming he had to do or something. So yeah, I would look. Next time you see him, just say, look, give him the website.
It was entirely random. Next time I see him, might be at our next festival with any luck.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, I mean,
That
we
would
don't
be
want to
good.
we don't want to say too much, but it's the 35th anniversary of Road Warrior.
40th.
Oh, sorry,
40th.
40th anniversary of Road Warrior. And we're manoeuvring to try to get it for the festival, I guess, without saying too much. And I mean, if Vernon Wells is going to be in town shooting, then it'd be great for him to be part of it. So hopefully we'll have some news on that moving forward.
That'd be so cool. That'd be so
That would
cool.
be very cool. Mate, we've taken up so much of your time.
Yeah, I'm going to go get some lunch now because it's. I know you guys probably bedtime for you. Vernon's going back to bed. I'm the only one who's not going to be having a nap now, I think, or whatever. So.
I haven't had dinner yet, man. I gotta eat.
Dinner.
I fed the cat before I fed myself.
I've really enjoyed this. It's been so cool. I mean, and you two guys have been lovely. So let's do this again, and let's flip it over and sometime in the future, and we'll do it. I mean, I know we only barely scratched the surface of the Aussie stuff that we wanted to talk about. So maybe we can do a follow up for you guys as well, because I appreciate there's quite a few things probably you want to get in there as well. So in the future, let's we'll do a kind of reverse a part 2 and see how that goes.
That'd be great,
That sounds
mate.
great.
Give all our followers all your details. Where do they can find you? Tell us a bit about the 5D blog.
Basically, the 5D website is 5d-blog.com, and basically you can access the 5D podcast, plus the bits and pieces of writing that I do, plus features that we put on. We've got interviews, we've got competitions, and so forth. So we've got social networking links on the website as well. So that's 5d-blog.com, and it's a funky little website that my son put together, which is really cool. And pay it a visit. And obviously, we'll be sort of featuring you guys on there as well. So anything that you guys are putting together, we'll be putting up there as well. So let us know, and we'll get that on the website for you guys as well.
You're a gentleman.
Fantastic.
You're a gentleman. Thank you so much.
Nice one. Okay. All right. I think
Thank
we're winding
you
up for now. All right. You take care, guys. All right.
All
Have
the-
a good rest of your
Yeah,
day.
man.
All the best to Zach as well. All the best.
All right. We'll do. He'll hear that. All right. See you later.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye bye.